Welcome back to the Mind Body Project. Thanks for taking a little time to join me today. Please welcome my guest today. She is the first guest on my series I'm calling World Impactors. At the age of 9, her mother brought her and her 4 siblings to the United States from the Philippines for a better life. While waiting as a young child for her mother to bring the family to the United States, she learned a valuable lesson of sharing and giving, a lesson that has kept with her throughout her life, and she is now passing on to her children by giving back to those in need in the Philippines. Please welcome my guest today, who's making an impact on the world one action at a time. It's Magnolia Bickford. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, take off these goofy glasses. So, Magnolia is your full name in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Magnolia Ann, right?
Right.
So we can call you Maggie.
Maggie.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce you as Maggie, and you said Magnolia. So, an interesting fact about names, as you were sharing with me, in the Philippines, they go by your middle name.
Yes. So my whole family, it's I don't know what it is, but for some reason in Philippines they go by the middle name. So you tend to have a lot of middle names, nicknames. I mean, it's combined from the first 2 letters of your first name, then your middle name. So or if it's like John, it's John. So it's really weird, but that's how it is.
So then everybody in the Philippines calls you Ann.
It's actually either Ann, that's how they say it, or M-A, Ann. So it's really weird. I don't know. They just have a different way of nicknames. I think they shorten it, but then they multiply it by 2. So I don't know.
So it's just a lot.
Yeah.
So then, all your family, all that we've talked about on the phone, it's Ann, or they just use different ones?
No, they just call Ann.
Call Ann.
Yeah.
So, lived in the Philippines till you were 9.
Mm-hmm.
You have, like I said, you have siblings. You have.
Well, there was 4 of us in Philippines, but my mom ended up having another one in the United States. So there's a total of 6 of us. But just growing up, I was the youngest for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 5.
So you're the youngest for 9 years, and then when your mom had the younger, it was in the United States.
Yes.
So how is that being the youngest
For
the 9 years? Yeah.
I mean, I got pretty much everything I wanted.
So were you upset when mom had? So when you were no longer the youngest?
No, you would think I would, but no, I wasn't. She was she was so cute. It was hard to not like her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, I love my sister, but yeah, no, I had no jealousy or anything at all. I mean, my mom still treats me like I'm the baby.
Uh-huh.
So I'm okay with that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, your mom left the Philippines, working on trying to get a better life
Right.
for you and your siblings. So while your mom was gone, you stayed with your grandma.
Yes. So my grandma and my grandpa at the time raised us. So my mom had moved to Saudi Arabia. Anything in Philippines, it's always nursing or somewhere in the medical field, and that was the only way for you to even, if you wanted to get out to get a better life, that was like your one-way ticket. And so that's what she did. She left when I was younger than 9. I mean, I don't remember how long, but I know she was young. She was gone. So I did grow up with my grandma, and she was pretty much the only one I remember growing up. But I do remember my mom coming, visiting as often as she could from Saudi Arabia, just, and she would just send money to my grandma, so my grandma would buy us whatever we needed, or at least what she thought we needed.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted a dress, it wouldn't be the dress I wanted, it would be some fabric, and she would just sew, and we would all have matching clothes just to save some money.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So to kind of give perspective, how far is the Philippines from Saudi Arabia? Like, if we were talking a flight, is it?
You know what? I don't think I've ever figured that out.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea, actually. I know it's a flight. It's a few hours.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's north. I'm gonna go ahead and guess it's probably like within maybe 10 around there, but definitely maybe that range.
So I mean, it's quite a trip for her to come back and forth.
Right, and I know it wasn't often. It's probably, I mean, if anything, if I had to guess, it would be like maybe twice a year. That would be the only time I would see her.
And so, and then did you talk to her on the phone, or was
she would call. So with the time difference, we would have to time it right. And I do remember going to my aunt's work. I don't remember what time of day it would be, but I do remember going to her work, and then it would be set up. My mom would call. We would be able to talk to her for a certain amount of time. Of course, it was cut because there's 5 of us. So that's all I remember from when I was growing up. I just remember like having to set up that time and then go back to your normal life. You know.
So at that age, what is life like living in the Philippines with your grandmother and grandfather and with siblings? What's life kind of look like? Because I think it's probably, I grew up in pretty much Bowie, Texas, so it's hard for me to.
Right. Well, it's definitely a third world country. So my grandma's house was like the center. So we had my aunts, my uncles, their families, and their families in the same neighborhood. So we were all with our cousins. So it was hard to not have fun because we had our cousins and we were hanging out all the time, going to school together and getting whatever it was that we wanted at that time. And when I said wanted, it's really just, hanging out.
Yeah.
Not things. But there was probably maybe like 7 or 8 in a small house. And when I say small, it's probably, tiny. Like 3 in one room and 3 in another and, 2 in one. And it was like sardines, basically. And I remember in the beginning, we didn't have a bed, so and my mom would send the money, and then eventually we did have a bed. So it was like one of those things where I'm like, it's kind of vague for me, but I would see pictures, so I was like, oh yeah. But it was never like a sad memory. It was just, it was almost like we were always thankful for some reason. Thank you, Grandma.
So what's the age difference between your siblings? How much age difference is between you and the oldest?
I think we are at 9 years, and then they're 2 years apart, and then my middle brother, he is 3 years older than me, and then my sister is 2 years older than me. So it was kind of all over the place, but we all hung out.
And I'm sure they would have a different perspective.
Yeah.
On living there.
I'm sure my memories are different from what they remember, and mine is just all fun.
I think sometimes when we are younger, did you ever have that feeling of I miss mom, or was she was pretty much had gone to Saudi Arabia because she worked as a nurse?
Yes, yes, she was. I would remember missing her, and then we would almost forget sometimes because you're more used to not having her around than you are with her. So it was weird when she would come, and you're like, okay, how do I act? Like, I know it's my mom, but do I, it's weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, almost like you're dating or something, maybe, and like you have that feeling of like, how do I, present myself in a way. So, yeah, she would, but I do remember her being around like sometimes at Christmas and birthdays. I do remember getting like, the fancy cakes, because normally we don't. And so it was nice. So those are my good memories.
So when she decided in Saudi Arabia, she's working, saving money, I'm assuming trying to move. Was her goal to move to the United States to bring all of you to the United States?
I think that was the stepping stone, just to get out. Of course, it wasn't easy for her. And, I have like some resentments, I would say, not having her around in a way. But knowing how it is there and being a mom myself, I could see why she did it. I mean, I probably would do the same, and it would be just as hard to leave the kids let alone 5 kids, you know, and so.
So you sometimes put yourself in that situation with your kiddos and think, if they were just born, could I leave knowing that it was going to be a better life?
Right.
And that's a hard decision.
Right, it is. So anytime I would have a little bit of resentment, I would just automatically like think about that moment where I'm like, hey, she sacrificed more than what I can even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to do that and just to provide for your family is a lot to take in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good value to have.
And so she's ready for you to move. Was it something your family was excited about? You and your siblings were excited about? Because I'm sure especially when you're around all of your cousins, everybody, all your family in your neighborhood, and you're going to come to the United States and they're not coming, right?
Right.
Just
it was, at least for me, it was quick. I felt like it was like happening so quick, and I was like, what? I remember having to get a visa, and we did all the questions, like, hey, would you do this, you do that, and I'm like, why? And I had no idea. I mean, I kind of remember going through the whole process and having it be important, but at the same time, it just happened so quick. Like we did the interviews, and then out of nowhere, it's like, okay, you're leaving then, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We're leaving then. Like, okay, so we're leaving. And it's like, oh, okay, it's for good. Okay. So, you know, and then some random, like, I would go out with my grandma, and we would go to the store, and for some reason, they all knew, and they were like, oh, are you excited to go see your mom? And I'm thinking, I was like, I'm going to leave my grandma, because I was really close with her. I mean, like, very, very close. And so, you know, to be able to just leave what you know at that young age and going to like a whole completely different country. It was overwhelming, but it was hard for us to talk about our feelings. Like we weren't, it was almost like kind of not allowed in a way.
So is that just the culture?
Not necessarily. I think it was more our family, if anything. Now we're completely different. We talk about anything, but then it was almost hard to discuss anything. And so I kept a lot of stuff in being a 9-year-old. But yeah, at that time, I can remember, I'm like, I don't want to leave. I'm like, my grandma's here. I'm like, you know, I'm like, I feel bad thinking it, but I was like, I don't know my mom. But, you know, now I'm glad it happened, you know. But of course you're young, you don't know what you're talking about. So yeah.
And so did your mom come back over to go with you, to you and your siblings to come to the United States, or?
No. So in Philippines, there's 3 islands, main islands. So we were in, not one of the main, we had to take a boat. I don't remember how long the boat ride was, but I do remember there was bunk beds everywhere.
In the boat?
Yes. So I don't remember if we slept. I just remember being there and having fun getting there. And we went, and then we got to the main island, Manila, and we were there with my uncle, my aunt, well, family. We were there, and then I don't remember the plane ride. It was just us 5, and we were like, what do we do? Like, and I was like, you know what? I'm glad of the baby, because I'll just follow home. I didn't know where to go. So, I mean, I don't remember if my sister, my brother, you know, the eldest, if they knew what we were doing. But somehow we got there safely, and yeah.
And where'd you go?
So this was in LAX. I remember walking, and it's, you know, obviously it's big crowd, tons of people, and I just remember my mom, like, I guess she was like by the gate, and she just called my name, and I was like, what? And I looked over, and I didn't know. I was like, how did she even see us? You know, but she just yelled it out, and all of us just hugged her, and I just remember the smell was different. Just everything was different. Of course, it was cold. So it was cold. And I think it was like in April is when we came.
Mm-hmm.
It was freezing. But yeah, I mean, we drove, and anytime, so from there we went to an aunt's house. We went straight to an aunt's house.
And she was living in California?
Yes, my mom was living in California at the time with her husband and my little sister.
So, we'll back up a bit. So, your mom she had been in, how long had she been in the United States?
At that time,
Uh-huh.
that I don't know. I want to say maybe like 2 years.
So, had you
3
met?
Maybe? No, we never met.
So, you'd never met her husband and your new little sister?
No, it was just pictures.
Uh-huh.
It was actually out of nowhere, and she would mail us pictures and stuff. And she sent a picture of a baby, and that's when we were like, wait, what? Like, we have a sister. So, yeah, it was like automatically accepted. And so, but yeah, that's what happened. That's how it started as far as getting here.
So then you're in the aunts, you go to the aunts, and do you stay there very long, or did your mom?
No, we just kind of stopped by, but they were on the way, and our aunt, of course, we're like so timid, so shy, didn't say anything. You know, of course, we did our respectful hello. In Philippines, you have to bless, so it's this way. You have to take their hand and do that.
You take the person's hand.
Yes, so it's like, you gotta do this. So that's how you greet somebody, especially if they're older. No, but they gave us some grapes, a bowl of grapes, and we were like sitting, just looking at it, because I don't remember ever having grapes before, and we just looked at it, and then they went to go talk, but just in the corner, and we just stormed that. I mean, it cleared out in less than 5 minutes. She came back and she's like, "Oh, okay, I'll go get more," and we just remember, we're like, "Oh my gosh, how embarrassing was that?" Like, it's like, but at the same time, I'm like, it's embarrassing to think about it, but we were also like excited.
Mm-hmm. Like, this is the best.
But, yeah.
So when you went to her house, that was like so much different than where you came from in the Philippines.
Yeah. So from there we went, and then from there we went to our house, which was in Fountain Valley, California. We walked in, and we were like, they had food on the table, and I remember I think it was ham, and we were like, what? Like, this is the most food we have ever seen. And just smell, like everything. It was like so nice and clean. And so I think we all raced looking for our sister, the baby. And we're like, where is she? So we're running around the house looking for her. Well, I guess she was sleeping between like pillows. So we all missed her. And eventually she woke up, and she was.
So that's gonna have to be a huge adjustment. So for your mom and for stepdad, I mean, you come and you haven't seen your mom very often in all those years, and then now they just married within a couple of years, have a new baby. Now they have a whole bunch of kids. So were there struggles? Were there kind of adjustments that you had to make, and that your mom and stepdad had to make them? That's huge.
Yes, but at the same time, a Filipino culture, it's embracing someone always for some reason. Like if someone is in need and you need help, like it's just automatically like, okay, I'm here. Like if you are struggling, it's like, okay, we got room in the house, even though you don't have room. For some reason, we make room, and it's always been like that. So anytime, that happens. It's so with us going with my mom and my stepdad, like it was almost steady in a way. I mean,
Was he from the Philippines?
he was too. But he's been out in America for a while now, and
so he was accustomed to the culture, and so that was just part of it.
So it wasn't too much of a difference. Like it was almost fun to have people around. If anything, like it's good company. So good to know.
and so then you go to school. So I'm sure school is. So did you speak English when you came?
So in Philippines, you are taught English. It is part of school.
Really?
Like yes, and I mean I remember growing up and in class we had an English subject, and it was to speak English, to read, to write. So it wasn't anything, but we were just shy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was having to speak to somebody who wasn't Filipino, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
And that's, I mean.
It was terrifying.
Uh-huh.
Terrifying. Like, I was by myself. I had to take the bus, and my siblings were together because they were closer in age, but I was in a whole different school, and it was terrifying. And I'm like, I always sat in the back. I never really paid attention, I guess I would say. I would just kind of look around and see what they're doing, and I would do it too. But eventually, I got accustomed to it. So, yeah.
Because this was in the 90s?
94. Yeah.
So that's a big change. I mean, you're around your siblings all the time, your family, and then you go to school and you're not around.
Yeah.
And so you go to the same high school the whole time and stay in California all through high school?
All through high school, but we did move around. From the area we were in, we moved to a different place, and then that was like another change. And so it was always like something until we finally stayed at one area because the second house that we stayed in, it was kind of just the neighborhood was getting a little too much, at least for what my mom was telling us. So we ended up moving to Anaheim House in California, and that's where I went to high school and even after.
So we're currently a long way from California.
Mm-hmm.
So do you go after high school? Do you go to college?
Yeah, so I did hair. That's what I went to school for, and I did work in like Beverly Hills area. And during that time, that's when I met my husband Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually we had our baby, and so we're like, all right, so what do we do? Like, do we put him in daycare and all that stuff? And so just the cost of living alone and having to pay for daycare, it was not like here.
It's a lot different.
And even now.
And how long have you and Thomas been married?
Oh gosh. He not really answers this. Okay.
Okay,
my son's 13. Okay, 12, 13.
13
I think. Yeah. Together for 13. Or 14 maybe.
Somewhere around there.
Yes.
He would be the one to ask to get the exact.
So. He does the math better. But yeah, somewhere around there.
So then have a baby, cost of living gets kind of expensive.
Yes. So since my mom's been in nursing, she did open her own business, family business, hospice and home health. So she wanted to make sure that we were also taken care of. Our kids were also taken care of. So she's working just to provide. And it ended up being like a family business. So even now, it's still going. And I do occasionally help here and there. It's remote.
So, and do all your siblings still?
Yes. Some of them,
there?
they work there. Some don't. But majority are in the medical field. But no, that kind of answers your question to daycare and all that. So I did eventually stop doing hair for a while just because I'm like, just cost of living. So I would work for my mom, be able to bring my son, Jeremy now, to just go in there and work with me. And then I had my daughter Rose. So it was almost like I had to stop doing what I went to college for and then do that. And so it's always interrupted, I would say. I'm like, am I not meant to be doing this?
Because really it was cheaper
Yeah.
to be able to take them with you and not pay for daycare.
Right. And to be able to be there for your kids growing up. And so it's a win-win, I would say. So
And so then Thomas is working too while you're in California and you're working through mom. And so how old were the kiddos when you moved to Texas?
Thank goodness they were young. I believe Rose was 4 and Jeremy was 6.
So is that a challenge to move from your family yet again?
Away from them?
Yes.
So I've always been really social. I'm always out. My brother would call me a fly because I would just land somewhere, stick there, and then take off again. So No, it wasn't too bad. I was acclimated, you know. If anything, it was more just having to have a babysitter. If anything, I mean, even now we still struggle. Thank goodness they're getting a little bit older, but you know, it wasn't too bad. We still visit as often as we can, like, you know, for holidays, summer, here and there. Yeah.
So what made you decide to come to Texas?
Well, my husband's from Iowa, so he's always been into like just being out in the country. If anything, he just loves it. I did fight it for a while, and we were trying to figure out where we were trying to move, but eventually work led us here, and we actually moved to Liam first. Yeah.
And so for like him to work or
Work remote.
Work remote.
And then he ended up opening a business, an office out here, in the same company. So
that brought you.
And then, well, he wasn't happy with the land that we had. It was just, you know, it was still in the city. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is so country. Until we moved out here, and I was like, oh, where is everything?
This is real country.
Yeah. But now I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I got used to it. You know, it just took time.
And so then you get to still see your family some. Did your family come out to visit here?
They came out once, and they drove, and they actually had a really good time. Like they came out here, and we were just shooting, just fishing, and I mean, like they were just like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And so yeah, they had a good time.
And so as you know, we talked last week. Basically, you come to the gym. Hadn't seen you for a while. It's been a couple of weeks, and I never got a chance to ask Thomas, you know, where you were.
Yeah.
So I saw on Facebook that you had gone to the Philippines, and I thought, well, maybe with the church mission. So I reached out to you to see, you know, why, you know, was that the case? Did you go by yourself? And so how did that come about? Because that was just a few weeks ago that you went back to the Philippines.
Right.
How did that come about?
Well,
And what would you do when you went?
Well, it's always something my mom would always do, even when we were young and when we were in the Philippines. She would always send us like boxes, and it would be like, you know, it's almost like Christmas every single time she sent something, because you open it and you're like, it's from America. Oh my gosh, you know. And so, and then there would be extras for somebody who is in a lot more need than we did. So, just growing up and seeing that, hearing from my grandma, she would constantly say the same thing, like, hey, you know, be happy with what you have. So we were always having to be reminded of that. So we did grow up giving, or having to, and it just grew with us ever since we moved. And even when I was young, I wouldn't say I was totally part of it, because I'd be lying if I was, but I would see my mom boxing something to send to Philippines, and I'm like, oh, but we're not there. And she would explain to me, well, just because you're not there, other people are. I was like, okay. So I would just pay attention, and I would just look. And
so she'd still be doing this once all of you were in the United States, and she's sending back to the Philippines.
Right. It would be, you know, some from my family who are still there, my cousins and stuff, and then some I don't know where else it would go. So, but I know it's going to go somewhere else. So now, fast forward years later, just having to go through a lot of things out here, not just now, but like just in general, like having to go through like the tough times, and it makes you kind of be like, you know, you're down, and you start thinking about like, oh, what about me, you know? And so eventually, even Thomas, we would sometimes have those moments when we're just like, oh, you know, we're struggling with this or that, and it's like, wait a minute, you know, kind of snap out of it and be like, you know, there's so many more people who are going through so much worse. And you know, my mom, I remember she had gone out on her own. We were actually supposed to go with her. This was in 2019. We were supposed to go for Christmas and New Year's.
To the Philippines.
Yes. And my mom was going to go with us. And so, but Thomas got sick, and I had to, just be there for him. And so we're like, we can't go, but we gave her some money to just, maybe just go for us.
Mm-hmm.
So she did, and for that time, she went with my cousins. She works with daycares, and she's part of like the council in that area. So it's almost like a buoy.
Philippines.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
kind of like a buoy area. And so what they did was, it was during school, so they had all the kids out there, and she just bought like food, and many of those kids apparently have never had that type of food. It was just chicken spaghetti.
Uh-huh.
I mean, but they've never had it, and so to hear a lot of stories about the kids that didn't have it, or the ones that saved half of their food for a sibling who was at home, or hearing the teachers had to share their lunch because some kid didn't have any lunch. So it was hard to hear all that. And so we would see all the videos. There was at least, I want to say, maybe like 70 kids or so.
Wow.
Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to count, but yeah, there were that many kids just saying thank you and, just having a good time. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was the first time we really were like, oh my God, like what a feeling,
Mm-hmm.
So 2 years later, last month, we went again, or I went again. He couldn't go. It was supposed to be a family event.
So Thomas and the kids were supposed to go. And
yes, he couldn't go, and then last minute I could not get the kid's passport. I was like, okay, it's not happening, but I might have to go because we are. So through backtrack. So October of last year was when we started like going through our closet. We're just kind of clearing things out, and it was a lot more than we thought. We're like, whoa. We're like, okay. So what do we do? And Thomas, he was actually like, hey, what about like, sending it to Philippines? I'm like, okay, because I've already donated so many out here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay. So first it was one box, and then we went through the kid stuff, and it was just like one after another, and it was like boxes after box. We ended up sending like 6 boxes total.
The stuff that you just cleaned out.
Yeah, well, yes and no, but we ended up going to Dollar Tree. I mean, we just ended up like buying a lot of stuff too, and that's what we did for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. We were just like boxing things up, and so which actually took a lot of time and effort.
Yeah, because you gotta go to. So then, how do you know how much to buy? Like if you're going to the Dollar Tree in different places.
We didn't, since it was like our official first time, as in like getting things and boxing it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally it's my mom. And so I'm like, I don't know how to box this. I'm like, is there a separate way? So I was like, I'm just going to put it together. And it was mostly like school supplies, clothes, shoes. I knew shoes were like a big deal because it's always like sandals, even if you're in the middle country and you got to walk
Mm-hmm.
miles and miles, and it was like sandals. So, to have shoes here and there, it was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I reached out to my cousins, and they had just arranged a lot of things for everyone to kind of help out.
That you could send it to them, and then they would disperse it and where it needed to go. And
Well, to be ready in a way, because I was just like, I want to be there. I want to see the kids. I just want to be there.
When you went out there.
When I went out there.
Uh-huh.
So we almost timed it perfectly where the boxes came just in time. Thank goodness.
Uh-huh.
Because they were like, it was like a few days before I got there, and I was getting really worried. I was like, I don't think the boxes are there. I don't think they're going to make it. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, this is going to be just a trip. So thank goodness it got there on time.
Mm-hmm.
So
then how many boxes did you send when?
it was 6 total.
Uh-huh.
And of course, I told my cousins, I'm like, hey, if you see anything you like, just go ahead and get it. But majority of them are, for the schools, the kids, the ones that don't have anything. And so that's what we did.
And your mom went out with
My
you?
mom, yes. So it was me and my mom
Uh-huh.
that went. And then my cousins, some of my cousins came out too. But as far as like having to do all this, it was.
So how when your mom went and gave box and saw videos, how was that feeling different when you're actually there? And to see them get those things?
It was definitely different. I think I've only gone back 3 times. This being my 3rd time. The 2 times I wasn't really paying attention. The first time, I was having fun. It was my cousins, and it was like back to normal. The 2nd time, it was like, oh, nice island. Still, again, didn't pay attention as much. This time, I think I did. I focused more, I guess, on just the smiles you see, and it was just a relief, like a good feeling to have. Not just with my cousins, but to anybody who got something. Like kids jumping up and down, getting a blanket. And I'm thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, this kid just jumped up and down for a blanket. And so, and that was just one of those moments where we had extra stuff in the van, which we rented. And I saw some kids walking out, or just walking, and I'm like, pull over. So I pulled over, and I jumped out, I swung the door wide open, and the kid was like, he was really scared of me. He really thought I was going to get him or something. But, yeah, so the dad was there, and he, got in front of the kid, and I was like, no, I'm like, I'm here. And they didn't want to take it. I'm like, no, seriously, here. So I had to give it to them, and then finally they kind of understood. And so, I just got swarmed with maybe 20 kids.
When you did that?
Yes, maybe 10, I'd say. Yeah, they came, and I'm just like, here you go, here. I'm like, that's all I have, I'm sorry. So, yeah, but it was just nice, just to have that feeling at that moment. But the time that or at least from when we did it, we had set out certain days to do it. Unfortunately, at that time, there was a typhoon going on, so it was we had to time it right as far as the rain. And we had to rent, with 6 boxes, we had to rent a ride. And in Philippines, you don't really have that. So,
to rent a ride?
To rent a ride. Normally everyone walks, or they have a motorcycle that they call for, and it's, they can only take you so many places. And
on the back of a motorcycle?
Yes.
And you couldn't fit all the boxes on the motorcycle?
So we had to get a van, and this, a transportation one, it's called Jeepney. So it fit maybe a few boxes there, a few boxes here, and so that was it was actually I think it's it cost $55 to rent one for a few hours, so it was good. And then we had to drive an hour south, which is kind of further out. We had 2 stops there. So the first stop, we did work with a councilman that was there, so he helped us. My cousin helped us, so she knew a lot of people there because she lives there currently, helping some kids as much as she can. She knew some schools too, so there was probably, I don't know how many kids, but there was a good, even parents were there, babies, so.
Okay, they knew you were coming. And
yes, so they were prepared. They were told, hey, we got some stuff. So these were all younger kids. From a baby to maybe in their 20s, as far as younger kids, to grandmas.
So what happens when you're giving out stuff and it's gone?
It is really sad.
Yeah.
It's actually really sad because they would be running late, and they heard about it, and they're running, and they're like, "There's nothing." I'm like, and I feel so bad. I'm like, "What do I give you? I've changed, But yeah, if anything, on the way there, we did stop by at a store, and it's one of those outdoor store, and you can just buy this and that. We bought bags of rice, and we just kind of scooped, put it in a bag, so we could share. And if anything, I would say the moms were really happy with the rice because they don't have a lot, and some kids would have to work, help make money just to have food on the table. So
it's definitely a lot different than what we experience in the United States.
Right.
So over that whole time, did you was it just a couple days that you gave out and visited family and friends the rest of the time? And does it just help you when you come back to be a little more grateful?
It does, actually.
For for just, I mean, just the simple things we have. I mean, we probably wouldn't get excited over a blanket, but.
Right. Well, I will say I was really excited about a shower. It was to take a shower there. Well, unless you have a water heater and it's plugged in and you have to turn it on, and sometimes it might not work. So it's cold water, and if there's no electricity, you have, and this is in almost every places, they have a big bucket of water and a pail, and you have to do this cold water. You know.
So you just dip it in the bucket,
Yes.
pour it over your head.
Yes, and if there's a lot of you in that one room, or you have to share the bucket. So you get one or two maybe just to shower off, and I did have to experience that one a few times.
So that's just one or two ladles full of water before that's your shower, your bath, whatever.
So you have to do everything once with just a little trickle, and then after that, it's like, okay, you got one big one to rinse everything off. If not, it was, growing up, it was like, go to the beach, take a shower there, and shower, And so
that's how growing up you would typically bathe.
And when it rains, it's like, use the, what is that thing called? Where
Like
water
the spigot, the spout.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, everybody go get your shampoo, go get in line, and we would get in line, and that's how we showered when I was growing up. But it was fun. It was fun.
And so have your kids been back?
They've never been back. They've never been.
They've been Philippines.
Or Thomas. He's never been.
He's never been.
So our plan is to go hopefully next year, if not, 2 years. And just plan it out right. And this time I want to, at least I know what to do as far as like what was needed most. Sending boxes it is fun, but it's also money consuming just to send the box. I think we paid like $80 a box.
Just to send the box,
not what's inside. And so even my mom, she was like, I think it might be best if we just get a few things here, and then the rest maybe buy it there because it is cheaper. So maybe do it that way, and then if anything, it's like maybe get more rice for them, something to eat with. So I think that's our plan.
So then when you get there are places you can buy all those things.
Right. You can go to, like the supermarket. It's almost like a maybe trade day type, but more confined, if anything. And it's a lot cheaper. So.
But was it pretty disappointing for the family not to be able to go with you, for the kids and Thomas?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I had to make sure. I'm like, okay, get this camera. Let's. I don't have an iPhone. I have an iPhone, so it was like the pictures it's not as clear. So I had to bring a real camera. So I would have to tell my cousins, I'm like, can you make sure you take pictures and videos? And so I have all that on my phone and on the camera. And so they were like, I'm like, so do you want me to have somebody follow me around? And he's like a celebrity? I was like, no. So, but it was funny because it felt like I was treated that way, because one time it was like raining, and one of the guys, he was the councilman, he was actually like holding an umbrella over me, and I'm like, are you doing that? I'm like, don't do that. I'm like, I'm not here to, be praised. I'm like, no, we're just giving out, we're in it together. So, but I thought it was funny. I'm like, I'm fine. It's just rain. It's okay.
And what would the feeling be like? You went to your neighborhood, right?
Yes. So we did 2 stops. That first day we did 2 stops, and then the third day, the second day was where I grew up.
So what would that feeling be like for you as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old, to have somebody come and get some of those things?
I mean, it literally brought me back to being young and to be able to see all that. Like the kids' faces that was my face when I was getting stuff from my mom, and it just kind of brought me back to just being that kid again, especially having to do it where I grew up. And every single time I go back there, it changes so much to where it's like, it just gets worse and worse, I would say. And I'm like, okay, was it this bad, or is it getting worse? So it just kind of makes you question, the living environment that you were in. But for some reason you were happy.
So you think is it the place has changed or is it me that's changing?
Yeah.
And the place looks different.
Right.
Because I think that's true. I think I agree. I think as kids we go back as adults and we think I had so much fun here, but then you go back to if you stayed somewhere, you're like, oh, that was so big, and you go back to don't go, oh, that's a little house, or that's that doesn't look as much fun as when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I think too that helps us, appreciate and get through the things as a kid. Sometimes as an adult, we go back to wow, that's a lot different.
Yeah.
And is that something you share with your kids when you came back about some lessons you learned there and
Well, so we've always tried raising them to be grateful for what we get and what we have. Thomas grew up in the country in Iowa, in a small town, so he kind of knows that type of living in a way. But I would always say, I'm like, it's not a third world country. I'm like, you don't know. So eventually, I showed him because I did like a full-on 360 of where I grew up. I'm like, what do you think? I'm like, it's not Iowa, right? And so, of course, he's like, yeah, I know. But I'm like, you know what? I'm like, it's going to be good for the kids to go, even for you too. But it's going to be, I think if anything, they've accepted kids, giving. They understand that part. So I'm really glad we raised them that way because they are thankful, and when they do have their moments where they're like, I want this, I want that, and I'm like, hey, remember what happened? And then they kind of stop, and I'm like, okay, thank goodness we raised them that way. So, but
and we are fortunate in the United States that things, as much as we complain about things, they do get better. I mean, we get iPhones that just in the last 12 or 13 years came out. I mean, the amount of computers and AI, it's just our world in the United States is continually growing. But as you mentioned, in a third world country, maybe it's continually getting worse.
I would say certain areas are, but some are growing. I recently found out that Philippines is trying to be more open to tourists, so it can get better. Because they notice that the more people come, the more money they make, and it's not just it's mostly in the bigger cities, I would say. So like anytime you land, there would be somebody, a husband or dad, ready to help you with your boxes, to push it for you, so you don't need to pick it up for you, and you just tip them. And that's how they make their living. And so there would be a lot of times when, my mom would say, because I would rather live there myself, and my mom would be like, no, just let them. And so I'm like, okay, let them. That's how they make their living. So I had to learn that and just let them do it. So, but little things like that is what's making it better. But of course, in the smaller towns here and there, the secluded areas, it's not as much. But I think, I guess it just depends, location, people, who's around, and who's willing to help.
And I think that's an important point. Oftentimes, even on our day-to-day, when people want to help, we don't allow them to help.
Right.
And when we don't, we steal their joy. And because that gives them joy, they're trying to make a living. They want to help. And so by you allowing them to help in the Philippines, they make money. The same thing is true, I think, with us when others want to help us and sometimes we're not so willing to take help. Well, it's really when we say yes, it makes them smile. But sometimes it's hard for us. And a lot of times, people probably listening say, well, I can't afford to, I can't go to the Philippines for time or money, whatever it is. I can't necessarily afford to fill up a box and spend $80 to mail it to the Philippines. What would you say to somebody that would say that? But they want to impact. They want to make an impact. What would you say to somebody that says I can't do all that? But
I mean, if you'd say if it's money, if you want to it's kind of hard because it's like, how do you get something there without spending money? If you're limited to maybe $100, that is beyond, more than what, I mean, that's over, I don't even know my math, but it's $55 or 55 pesos
Uh-huh.
for $1. So that can buy
So that's
so
a bunch.
much. Yes. The rice alone is like 2,000. So it's under 100. I think it's like $38
Uh-huh.
for 110 pounds
Wow.
of rice. So imagine how many families you can feed
Uh-huh.
just doing it that way. So that is my plan for next year, or hopefully soon,
Mhm.
to get more rice, if anything, and maybe just have a little bit more bigger bags,
Mhm.
you know, and to know how many helped with just the 2 bags that I got,
Mhm.
and do it that way. Or if you feel like, you know, there's somebody that you can trust to go, and if they're going, then send it that way. I mean, like, that's probably what I would say, if anything, if it's food.
Mhm.
It's probably one of the most, and shoes.
How do you think people can change their world that's around them? Maybe it's not the Philippines. Maybe it's in your house. Maybe it's in your neighborhood. Maybe it's in your community.
Attitudes.
Huh?
Attitudes.
Attitude.
Right. Well, I mean,
How explain attitude?
you could look at something bad and think, oh man, that's really bad. Or you can say, okay, what is not bad? So there's that gray area of how you how you see something, you know. So you can be negative about something that could be and should be something negative, but it's how you just see it, you know. It's like, if I was like, so I got in a car accident a year ago. My back has been really, really bad. It's bothered me. So I could complain and just lay down all the time, eat whatever I want, or I could improvise my workouts and work around my pain. So there's those two. So it's the attitudes that you give. So same thing with your house, your neighborhood, your town, your country. You know, it's just your attitude. Pray about it.
And attitude costs $0.
Yeah, it's free.
Nothing. And you're right. Attitude can change everything in your world. And then an attitude is contagious. We've all gone into a room that is sad or angry or mad, and we find ourselves in the same way. If you go into a party that's happy and cheery, you get the same way. And sometimes it starts with us being the one that initiates that. Whether it's good or bad, it's our attitude that can change everything. And you could have easily said, well, Thomas can't go, the kids can't go, I'm not going. The box is already shipped, we're just going to do it. But instead, the attitude was, no, my mom and I are going to go, and we're going to make a difference. And to see those, because yes, pictures are great, videos are great, but I'm sure the energy you felt there was way greater than what you can ever explain to the kids and Thomas.
Yeah.
They just can't get that feel of gratitude and thankfulness from those kids and the families with them. So it's just a great thing to be able to make that impact. And do you feel like when, say, a world impactor, do you feel like a world impactor?
I would say no. I mean, it's just, you just do, I guess, you know. I mean,
You did what was on your heart.
yeah, it wasn't so much like, okay, I need to be known for this, or, you know, I'm going to do it for somebody to recognize me. No, it was just, I'm just going to go. Like, I'm just doing this. Like, it's nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. So, it's just, you know, one of those things.
And you're exactly right, because I reached out to you because I wanted to know more. I wanted to know how it came about, why it came about, you know, if you went over on your own, because you weren't looking for to be on a podcast. You weren't looking for the world to know. You were doing simply giving back to your home and a place that you came from, knowing that there was a need. And I simply wanted to share that because when things do come from the heart, it does make a difference because it truly came from a place of servanthood, that I want to serve and give back because I'm able. Because if we are able, even sometimes if we aren't able, just like you mentioned, there are struggles, and giving back was a way to make it through those. And oftentimes, I think when we struggle, we just hold everything in tight. But your heart changes when you're struggling and you give.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of those moments where we were struggling. My back was hurting, Tom's back was hurting. We were just in the slums,
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, we just kind of stayed there and we're like, what do we do, So we just kind of talked about it and prayed about it, and eventually it was like, well, we could do this, let's give. And then it became so small. It started real small. And then eventually it was like, okay, more boxes. And it was next thing you know, it was 6 boxes. We're like, okay, well, I guess we're doing this, And so, even my cousin, she was telling me that this was the most they've gotten so far. And it was good to hear. I was like, really? I'm like, for some reason it was a lot, but it didn't feel a lot. I felt like we could have done more.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm chasing that feeling of just doing more, if anything, And so I actually was like, hey, who's that? I kind of wanted to get to know more, who was helping, and I want to hear the kids' stories, spend more time doing it that way. Because yes, did I hang out with my cousins and had fun doing this and that? Of course I did. I haven't seen them in a while, and my family, and so we did have that. But I think because I was far away from my family, my husband, and kids, my time was cut short. Mm-hmm. So I was only there for 10 days, and I only did that for 2 days. Mm-hmm. So all the other times it was either traveling, having to fly, and having to adjust to time, which is a lot harder than it's.
So, and what's the time difference there?
A day. So if it was 2 o'clock right now, it'd be 5 in the morning there. So wow. It's a day ahead.
Uh-huh.
And 3 hours over 4. One of those.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a big difference.
Yeah, if you're flying at night, you get there at night, but you already have slept. So it's one of those so it's no sleep.
Mm-hmm. So it's a big adjustment, but it did give you that feeling of, well, I did a little, and you feel it's a little, but it's really a lot to them. And you think, what more can I do? Right. And I think that's how great ideas start. Is they start small. It was 1 box. Let's clean out a closet. We can send it. And then it was, well, what else can we buy? Then 1 box turns into 2 to 3 to 6, and who knows? Next year might be 12, might be 24, and it might be that also then you start looking for opportunities. How can we make it grow and help those in need? Because that is where your heart is in the Philippines, in your neighborhood, and it's making impact in the lives of family and friends that you grew up with, I'm sure, and that really is impactful, and it all starts with 1 small step.
Yeah.
And what a great example for you and Thomas to be to your kiddos, to be able to see that. And, when we are in need, we can still, whether it's need of prayer, whether it's need of healing, whether it's need of time or money, we can still take an opportunity to give, because there is always somebody less fortunate than we are. No matter where we are in life, no matter the problems we have, there is somebody else that we can give to. Whether it's our time, energy, money, whatever it is, we can give to those. Right. So, thank you, Maggie, for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your story of impacting the world, because you are, and I know there's going to be a lot bigger impact that you're going to continue to do, because it is that feeling of what you did, and chasing that feeling is will help it grow bigger and bigger. So,
I'm really excited for whenever my family can come, because then I can really show them, this is where I grew up, and you're going to do what I did when I was young. You're going to have to learn the bucket and do all that stuff, take the cold shower.
And then they're fully understand, and then they come back home and go, whoa, I didn't realize we had it this nice by just flipping on a switch or getting in the shower.
Exactly.
And, it has nothing to do with the TV or the games, or it's just really the basics in life.
Exactly.
That we really take for granted.
Yeah.
So it does make a difference. Thank you for making a difference and teaching those, because it's our small actions that you make a difference in your home country, you make a difference in your children's life, your husband's lives, and we never know, let's call that a stone in the pond, because you do that and the ripples go out. The ripples will go out from here, from our conversation today, those that go, my heart is somewhere and I can make a difference in that place. It might be in my community, it might be in my state, it might be in my country, it might be in a different country. But it's a ripple. And just by people knowing that that's a possibility, that because your mom showed you it was a possibility. All those years ago, when you were just a child, she showed you that it was possible to make a difference and how that made you feel. And years later, when you're able to, you go, I want to make that same difference. And by doing that, there's going to be somebody that has gotten something from those boxes that move on in life and go, I want to come back and make a difference. Just like that thing I got, that toy I got, that rice I got, and I want to make that difference the same. And it's a ripple. So thank you for making a ripple in our world, because they're important. And no matter how big or small we think they are, they're very important. So thank you for that. And thank you for spending a little time with me and sharing your story with me. I'm excited for people to hear it and to be part of that ripple effect. So thank you, Maggie. You're welcome. Thank you to each of you for stopping by and visiting with us on the Mind Body Project. And as I tell my wife, came every night before I go to bed. It's bottom of the night, double A.